The sun cut low across the tarmac, the kind of pale light that gave the edges of every shadow a sharpness. A wind came in off the hangar doors, dry and constant. It tugged at loose papers, flapped open jackets, slid beneath fatigues. But Rachel Wynn didn't flinch. She stood next to the cargo ramp of a parked C-130J, checking the ratchet straps on a line of olive-drab containers. Her frame was compact, barely 5'4", her stance solid, her dark hair, tied into a regulation bun, didn't shift with the wind. Her hands worked slowly, with practiced pressure, testing the tension of each strap without rushing. Gloved fingers brushed steel hooks, then moved to her clipboard. She flipped a page. Pens scratched across the sheet. Her handwriting was narrow and methodical. On her left hip, a faded canvas bag rested against her thigh, its flap buttoned tight. Most people assumed it carried tools. Few had ever asked. A pair of crewmen passed her, both lugging an oversized comms case toward the bay. One muttered something. The other smirked. Cargo girl's still doing her thing. She didn't look up, didn't blink. She moved to the next container, eyes sweeping over latches, labels, seals. Her pace never changed. Inside the hangar, laughter echoed from the corner break zone. Airmen crowded around a card table, voices rising over clinks of mugs. Someone shouted about a bar tab. Another joked about a lost poker hand. Wynn didn't glance that way. She opened a panel on a generator case, checked the securing bolts, scribbled something in her notebook. She didn't carry a tablet like the others. No digital logs. Everything went into that old notebook, its leather worn smooth. The pages were filled edge to edge, margins crammed with secondary notations, abbreviations only she seemed to understand. A master sergeant had once told her to modernize. She had nodded once, didn't reply. Nothing changed. At 15:45, the C-130 crew assembled near the nose of the aircraft for a routine walkthrough. Wynn wasn't invited. Not formally. She stayed near the tail, watching the group from a distance. The co-pilot, a fresh-faced lieutenant with eager eyes, scanned a checklist too fast. The loadmaster glanced back at the cargo bay, then forward again without saying a word. Rachel finished inspecting the floor locks. She knelt beside the last tie-down point, adjusted a chain by half a link, and stood. There was grease along her forearms, a faint scuff on her boot. She brushed neither away. Her left sleeve was folded once at the cuff, the fabric pressed flat and even. She walked back to her equipment cart, alone, while others gathered their gear for departure. As the auxiliary power unit whined to life, she slipped past the crew, unnoticed, climbing the ramp and vanishing into the dim interior of the cargo hold. It was cooler there, quieter. Inside, the world narrowed to hard surfaces and the rhythmic hum of systems coming online. She moved without hesitation, checking clearance gaps, evaluating the weight flow from fore to aft. She tapped a bolt head with her knuckle. Solid. The vibration told her everything she needed to know. By 16:05, pre-flight checks were nearly complete. She remained at the rear, seated on a crate marked Med Sup 117. She flipped through the pages in her notebook, paused on a detail, rewrote a figure. The rest of the crew moved overhead, voices bouncing down from the cockpit. Someone called her name, then laughed. The tone wasn't cruel, just careless, familiar. She didn't respond. Didn't correct them? She tucked the notebook into the side pouch of her vest, fastened the strap. Another day, another flight. She ran her hand along the wall of the cargo bay, checked the hatch lock one last time. A habit. Nothing more. From the outside, there was no sign of emotion, no visible tension, just movement and procedure. She faded back into her post, back into the machine. Quiet, efficient, unseen. The ramp hissed closed at 0540. Rachel Wynn stood alone in the center aisle of the cargo bay, clipboard balanced against her forearm, pen already clicking. The C-130 groaned as the crew outside finished fueling. Inside, the air was still, heavy with hydraulic oil and aluminum dust. She moved along the line of pallets. Each was marked with a 6-digit identifier. She checked them against her manifest. Not once, but twice. The stenciling on the first crate was chipped. She didn't care. She knelt, tested the tension on the net, then checked the floor lock under the skid. It was tight. Still. She adjusted the cam buckle a quarter turn. Margins mattered. Another loadmaster might eyeball it. She didn't. Her pen scratched a note. Handwriting small, efficient, slanted back slightly. Quintao. Page flipped. Next row. A crewman walked past behind her, dragging a toolbox. Didn't say anything. Didn't look at her. She didn't turn. Her eyes stayed on the center of mass sticker. The weight looked off. She stepped back, squatted, and sighted down the cargo grid. Slight lean to the left. Not enough to trigger a red flag. Enough to bug her. She pulled a measuring tape from her vest, ran it from rail to edge. 2 centimeters discrepancy. She signaled a forklift operator nearby. He shrugged. Too late to reload. He said. She didn't argue. She unlatched the strap, shifted the load by hand. It took 7 minutes. No one helped. No one asked why. By 06:15, she was at the forward bulkhead. She tapped a fuse box gently with her knuckle, listening. She marked another figure, then ran her finger across the mounting bolts. 3 were tight. 1 felt loose. She tightened it with a T-wrench clipped to her belt. Didn't log that, just fixed it. Inside the cockpit, a mission briefing played over the radio. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Herrera, read weather updates out loud. Too fast. Wind at 14 knots. Possible crosswind. Another voice cracked in from Ops Command. Schedule pushed by 20 minutes. Wynn noted it in her book, but no one told her directly. She moved back toward the pallets. Stopped at one marked MedSup 308. The corner of the crate was cracked. She ran a finger along the edge, pulled a splinter free. It smelled like iodine and rust. Medical gear. Should have been double packed. It wasn't. She stepped to the side bay, opened a fresh ratchet strap, secured it tight across the damaged edge. No one saw. No one asked. At 06:30, the crew gathered near the tail for a final walkthrough. The aircraft commander barked out rolls, then handed off the floor to the loadmaster. He talked fast, pointed at rows, said nothing about weight distribution. Rachel stood back, outside the circle, clipboard at her chest, pen stilled. They didn't ask her anything. They never did. By 06:45, engines started whining to life. She walked the length of the bay one last time. Slow, deliberate. A knot in a strap. She fixed it. A loose cargo net loop. She rewound it. One crate sat slightly skewed. She nudged it into place with her boot. Rechecked the strap tension. Perfect. At 07:00, they were airborne. 2 hours later. A sudden turbulence. Pocket slammed the aircraft without warning. A hard lateral jolt, enough to throw a half-ton crate half an inch off alignment if it wasn't secured. Nothing moved. The loadmaster cursed, stumbled into a support bar. Rachel didn't flinch. She was already at the side wall, bracing. Her notebook slid but stayed tucked inside the cargo pouch. The C-130 righted itself. Turbulence faded. The crew cursed the jet stream and went back to their chatter. Nobody checked the straps. Nobody asked if anything shifted. Rachel walked the bay again, scanning. No displacement. No damage. No motion. She tapped one crate with the heel of her boot. Solid. The Med Sup 308 box hadn't shifted at all. She opened her notebook, scribbled a time, 0912, drew a square, made a small check mark inside. Then she sat near the rear hatch, back to the wall, clipboard on her knees. No one thanked her. No one noticed. The straps held because she made them hold. The crates stayed put because she'd seen the slant no one else saw. The system didn't break because she caught what others missed. The plane stayed level. The mission stayed quiet. She made sure of it. The squadron room smelled like coffee and static. Overhead lights buzzed faintly, diffused through yellowed plexiglass panels. A projector hummed against the far wall, its blue screen idle, waiting for the briefing to begin. It was 0425. The chairs weren't full. They rarely were for a supply run. A few aircrew leaned back, boots up on chair rails, flipping through paper packets out of habit. Others sipped burned coffee from white styrofoam cups. Nobody talked much. The mission commander, Major Denton, entered at 0427 uniform crisp. Eyes drawn. He moved like a man trying not to limp. A folded set of flight plans slapped against his thigh as he walked. He tapped the console without comment, bringing the screen to life. Forward. Operating base. Sierra 2 was the destination. No name. Just the number. It sat against a border no one officially recognized, in a valley where alliances shifted with the weather. The slide showed grid coordinates, supply types, personnel count. Nothing unusual. The list included trauma kits, encrypted comm units, 40 cases of MREs, and medical personnel, 17 of them. One pallet was flagged for priority loading. Red band painted across the crate. No explanation. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Travis Hall, shifted in his seat. He looked like he was still adjusting to the uniform. A month out of Laughlin. Nerves behind the eyes. He tapped his pen too often. Made notes he wouldn't check twice. Across from him, the aircraft commander, Captain Sloan, didn't look up. His face was lined with the kind of fatigue that had nothing to do with sleep. The weather slide came next. Wind patterns unstable. Crosswinds building northeast. Possibility of turbulence at FL 280. Nothing major. But Denton's voice clipped the edges of each phrase, sharper than needed. Hall cleared his throat, leaned forward. Are we expecting air traffic in that sector? Denton paused a moment too long. Nothing confirmed, but stay alert. That was it. Rachel Wynn stood near the back wall, behind the last row of chairs. Not officially part of the crew brief, but present. She held a folded manifest in one hand, pen tucked under her thumb. She didn't write anything, just watched. At 0445, the slide flicked off. No one applauded. No one asked questions. Orders were orders. Depart 0600. Arrival window estimated at 0915. Refuel at Echo Base possible on return. The schedule was printed on one sheet. No cover page. No signatures. No explanation for the updated route. A murmur passed between two techs. One used the word reroute. The other said contested. No one said it loud. Outside. The wind picked up. The door rattled faintly in its frame. Someone closed a binder too fast. The sound sharper than it should have been. Rachel turned, walked out, before the lights came back on. Clipboard tucked tight against her ribs. Boots soft on concrete. The hall was empty. The mission wasn't flagged as dangerous. Not officially. But the edges felt wrong. Like a line had been redrawn and no one told the pilot. She didn't look back. Just kept walking. Timing mattered now. There was weight to check. Straps to inspect. Nobody would notice what she caught. Not until something moved that shouldn't. And by then, it would be too late. At 0512, the tarmac was quiet except for the low rumble of ground units and the soft scrape of boots on concrete. A thin wind moved across the field, dry and cold. It caught the edge of a tarp on a fuel truck, flapped it once, then passed on. Rachel Wynn walked the length of the C-130J's ramp, clipboard tucked under one arm. Her steps were even, measured. She didn't speak to anyone. No one expected her to. The pallets were loaded 2 hours earlier, 8 in total. 4 standard supply, 2 medical, 1 communications, 1 marked classified. Red tape crossed the last. She didn't ask what it was. She paused at the first row, checked each ratchet strap by touch. No tugging, no jerking, just fingers pressing at the center point. Then the end clamps. She recentered a loose buckle, refastened the strap, moved to the next. Above her, the aircraft's skin reflected the morning light. It gave everything a faint gold cast, like the plane was lit from inside. She didn't notice. She kept working. At 0517, she flipped her clipboard open. The checklist was already half filled. Ink from a black gel pen, smudged slightly near the edge. She corrected a weight figure, circled a margin note about the rear stack shift ratio. Her handwriting was flat, all caps, no curves. A young loadmaster passed behind her, glancing at his tablet. He slowed, said nothing, then moved on. His stylus tapped against the screen as he walked. Rachel didn't look up. She reached the final pallet, a crate of oxygen tanks. The straps looked tight. Still, she undid one, ran her gloved hand along the metal ridge, then secured it again. 3 notches tighter. She checked the corner seal. 2 rivets loose. She marked it. No alarm, just a mark. At 0523, she stepped back, scanned the entire bay. Her eyes moved left to right, top to bottom, back again. She walked the perimeter once more, this time slower. She reached into her vest pocket, pulled a small wrench, adjusted a loose bolt near the wall anchor, replaced the tool, turned to the ramp. Outside, engines were still idle. The wind had shifted slightly east. She paused at the edge of the cargo door, adjusted the strap on her hip bag. It rode high and snug. She patted it once, checked the button, then turned back inside. At 0529, she sat on the bay floor, back to the bulkhead, and copied figures into a second log sheet. Her left boot tapped once against the aluminum panel. She stopped it, flipped to a clean page, began again. No one had called for her. No one needed to. Her part was always silent. At 0530, she closed the clipboard, stood, walked once more through the center aisle. Final check. Final stillness. The aircraft groaned faintly as fuel lines disconnected. The day had begun. At 0847, the C-130 leveled off at flight level 280. The aircraft was steady, light chop, but manageable. The crew had settled into routine, systems checks, monitoring gauges, quiet cabin, in the cockpit. Captain Sloan leaned back, eyes scanning the instrument cluster. His voice was hoarse from hours on comms. He adjusted the oxygen mix, tapped the pressure readout, then closed his eyes for half a breath. Behind him, Lieutenant Hall flipped through the flight log. His headset crackled with an incoming update. He fumbled the switch, didn't answer. At 0849, a chirp echoed from the radar console. Then again, louder, prolonged. Sergeant Owens, radar operator, straightened. A small red blip appeared. Northwest approach. High closure rate. Not scheduled. Not friendly. Unidentified aerial vehicle. Closing fast. Owens leaned forward. Confirmed. Classed it as armed based on speed, altitude, and trajectory. A Reaper. Maybe. But wrong transponder. No ID signal. No coalition IFF. He called it out. Hall blinked, looked toward Sloan, but Sloan wasn't responding. His chin dropped, hands slack on the yoke. Hall froze, half stood, then sat again. Oxygen warning blinked twice. The captain wasn't breathing normally. Skin pale. Pressure system failure. Slow leak. No time. Owens shouted. Hall grabbed the checklist. Dropped it. He reached for the comms. Fumbled with the switch. Requested cabin pressure confirmation. No response from the bay. Nothing but static on Channel 2. The UAV closed another 12 nautical miles. Lock-on range. Hall tried to switch to the CMDS panel. Wrong sequence. Flipped the exterior lights instead. A burst of white along the wingtip. Owens swore under his breath. By 0851, the UAV was 5.6 nautical miles out. Elevation matched. Attack speed confirmed. The co-pilot reached for the emergency override. His fingers hovered, then retracted. He turned toward the rear of the cockpit, sweat under his eyes. No one came forward. He called for backup. Voice cracked. Nothing. The aircraft jolted, slight drop in cabin pressure, a whoosh near the midsection, non-lethal, but enough to rattle the unsecured gear. The loadmaster cursed from somewhere behind the flight deck. Hall tried the defense panel again. Still nothing. His hands were shaking. The aircraft commander was slumped fully now, mouth open, eyes closed. The co-pilot did not touch him, just looked, waited. At 0853, Owens repeated the range. 3 miles. The UAV had adjusted angle, swooping now. Arming cycle probable. The threat was real. The defense system had not been engaged. No chaff, no flare, no evasive maneuvers. The silence inside the cockpit was absolute. Hall looked to the hatchway. Empty. He reached for the intercom. That's when Rachel Wynn entered the cockpit threshold. No one noticed her at first. She didn't speak, didn't ask. She looked at Sloan, then at Hall, then at the radar screen. Her eyes moved once across the panels. Then she turned. She walked out, back toward the cargo bay. Nobody followed. Nobody understood. At 0854, Rachel stepped into the corridor near the cockpit. The aircraft rattled with a shallow lateral roll. Alarms continued to blink, none urgent enough for the crew to move fast, but all stacked wrong. Oxygen fluctuation, pressure irregularity, hostile radar signature. She moved without rush, just forward, just alert. Chief Master Sergeant Bell stood at the hatch. His body filled most of the entry. Not your lane. Sergeant. His voice was flat. Authority worn from years in theater. He didn't raise it. Rachel didn't respond. She looked once over his shoulder. The co-pilot sat frozen. The captain unmoving. Radar still flashing red. She turned away. By 0855, she was back in the cargo hold. Alone. No one followed. The bay creaked. Straps groaned against turbulence. Light flickered overhead from the emergency array. Her boots echoed. She crouched beside crate 6129, opened the flap of her hip bag. One motion, button released. The M17 came out clean. Black slide, worn stippling. Trigicon RMR already mounted. Magazine inserted. Safety on. No hesitation. She checked the chamber. 1 in. At 0856, she moved to the side wall, pulled down the harness from the bulkhead. Steel clip locked at the hip, chest strap ratcheted tight. She leaned forward, let it hold her weight. Her right hand rested on the weapon. She moved to the hatch panel, unlocked the secondary seal, flipped the emergency override. Pressure vented instantly. The hatch cracked open with a long shriek. Cold wind punched through. The bay dropped 4 degrees in 10 seconds. Documents blew across the floor. Loose nylon flailed in violent arcs. She stepped to the edge. No words. Just stance. Just grip. The sky outside was pale, fractured with high-altitude turbulence. Sunlight shimmered off the UAV. It was there. Far and sharp. About 400 meters. Climbing. Shadow rolled across its fuselage. She adjusted her angle, body against the frame. Harness stretched, wrist steady. She raised the weapon, both hands, eyes narrowed. The UAV began a banking motion. Flaps extended. Rachel's finger touched the trigger guard. Everything slowed. Not in time. In wait. She inhaled, exhaled, held. At 08:58, the first shot fired. The wind inside the bay screamed. Metal vibrated beneath her boots. Her jacket snapped hard against her back. Harness taut, left foot braced against a crate rail. The M17 stayed steady. Rachel tracked the UAV as it approached from the northwest. Altitude matched. Nose pointed directly at their aircraft. A narrow profile. No room for error. She adjusted one step left, sighting down the optic. The Trigicon's dot held center, distance shrinking. The Reaper-style drone banked left. Small correction. Predictable. Her breathing slowed. Exhale. She squeezed. 08:58:12. The shot cracked across the open air. Sound swallowed by altitude. The shell ejected clean. Spun once. Vanished in the draft. The UAV lurched. Left wing struck. A thin trail of smoke coiled off the leading edge. Stabilizers shook. The drone rocked mid-flight. Dipped. Recovered. Damage confirmed. Not enough. Rachel didn't move. Eyes stayed locked on the target. Arm still extended. No celebration. No curse. Just tracking. The UAV adjusted pitch, reacquired angle, steady again. She let the slide reset, chambered the next round. Wind slammed harder through the hatch. One loose crate net tore loose from the far side of the bay. She didn't flinch. Inside the cockpit, nobody spoke. Radar lit brighter. Proximity warning climbed to final tone. The UAV began to drop altitude, not retreating, preparing. Rachel stepped forward again. Just a half inch. Let the harness hold all her weight, aligned for the next shot. Still silent, still watching. The next moment would decide everything. She let the drone drift in the optic for a full breath. Then she moved. Just her left heel. Just a degree of angle. The C-130 banked slightly right. She adjusted with it, calculated the trajectory, velocity, wind shear across the open bay. Everything mattered now. Weight, timing, pulse. The UAV was steady again, heading straight. Its nose had leveled. No more wobble. The pilot, wherever he sat, was confident. No one shoots from a cargo hold. Not at this range. Not with a pistol. Rachel eased pressure on the trigger, brought her left hand up a half inch, correcting for the last vibration. The drone was less than 200 meters out, close enough for profile detail. She could see its sensor dome, the faint metallic glint near the forward assembly. She didn't blink. The M17 rose just slightly. At 08:59:07 she fired. The shot cracked like a hammer through the wind. No echo, just one sharp cut. The round traveled clean, riding the slipstream, traced through turbulence. Hit square, impact near the center line. The drone's control module sparked, glowed, then erupted in a flash the size of a beach ball. Not massive, but enough. Its nose dipped. The aircraft spun in place, left wing detached. The shell lost lift and pitched downward, fast and jagged. It dropped out of frame. No explosion, no debris scatter, just silence. Rachel kept the pistol raised for 3 more seconds, then lowered it. She stepped back from the hatch, secured the safety, ejected the magazine. 1 round left. At 09:00:00 she turned, walked to the hatch lever, and shut it. The bay sealed with a vacuum snap. Temperature began to stabilize. She unlatched her harness, pulled the canvas bag from her belt, slid the pistol inside. No words. No one came to meet her. She sat at the rear of the bay, clipboard on her lap. Opened to the checklist. Found the section labeled In-Flight Anomalies. She wrote 08:58, UAV contact, neutralized. Then turned the page. The hatch sealed with a final metallic groan. Pressure equalized. The air steadied. Rachel Wynn stepped away, right arm slow to lower. A thin line of blood trailed from her forearm, where the wind had torn through the cuff. She didn't look at it, didn't bandage it. Just wiped her hand once against her pants, then reached for the loose strap hanging by crate 6129. The aircraft was silent. No alarms. No chatter. No one moved. In the cockpit, the co-pilot sat with both hands clenched against his thighs. Captain Sloan was upright now, dazed, eyes tracking. He blinked, said nothing. Radar showed nothing but sky. The UAV was gone. A crew chief came halfway down the bay, stopped short. Who fired? His voice wasn't loud, just sharp, like a command that hadn't fully formed. Rachel didn't answer. She clipped the strap back in place, checked its tension, pulled it twice. The blood from her arm left small smudges on the nylon. Another crewman stepped forward, pointed at the hatch. Somebody opened that from inside. Rachel walked to the far wall, retrieved her wrench from a mesh pouch, tightened a bolt on the oxygen pallet mount. One click, done. They watched her, the quiet one, the checklist girl, the cargo specialist. She moved without hesitation, still working. At 09:11, a flight mechanic made his way to the hatch, found scratches near the release lever. Fresh ones. He looked back at her, then down at her belt. The canvas pouch was sealed again, nothing visible. He said nothing. At 09:13, the crew gathered near the cargo bay entrance. Still no voice raised, just a growing silence, the kind that holds breath. A captain from the comms unit stepped forward, narrow eyes. Veteran. He stared at the pouch, saw the way it sat. Heavy, worn at the corners. "That's not standard issue," he muttered. "That's field gear." Rachel continued tightening straps along the rear crate row, not rushed, not hiding. The captain nodded to himself, walked forward, pointed at the pouch. "That's an M17. Still." She didn't look up. A tech sergeant leaned in behind him. That grip. Looks like a Ghost variant. Short trigger pull. Custom sight rail. Another voice added. "The ones they issue to Ghost 5. Only ever saw one of those in Syria." Rachel stood, picked up her clipboard, turned a page. The crew chief stepped back, watched her hands, the way they moved, how deliberate everything was. By 09:17, they stopped talking. Nobody called her out. Nobody asked again. They just looked. The UAV incident hadn't been reported yet. No comms confirmation, no debrief. But everyone on that aircraft knew what had happened. They knew who had stopped it, and none of them had touched a weapon. She hadn't used the aircraft's defense system, hadn't even spoken to command. She had acted. By 09:23, she was seated again, near the bulkhead, her left arm wrapped in gauze now, one-handed from the med kit by the wall. She opened her notebook, wrote a note, next to weight distribution log minor shift during turbulence. Secured. That was all. She flipped the page, began checking her tie-down list, one by one, quietly. The rest of the crew moved away, back to seats, back to duties. The whispers didn't stop. They just got quieter, more careful. They looked at her differently now. She hadn't claimed it, hadn't explained, but the UAV was gone, and Rachel Wynn was still tying straps. At 13:46, the C-130 touched down at Forward Operating Base Sierra 2. Offload was routine. No formal acknowledgement, no incident logged, no debrief requested. The crew dispersed across the base in groups of 2 and 3. No one mentioned the UAV. No one brought up the shot. By 14:10, whispers had already moved down the tarmac. At 14:32, a systems analyst from the comms team ran her name through internal personnel records. Routine clearance check. Unofficial. What came back wasn't expected. Technical Sergeant Rachel Wynn, formerly Master Sergeant, Special Operations Command. Reassigned under personal request, 2 years prior. Previous unit's 7th Special Tactics Group. Operational alias Wynn 3. Ghost 5. Confirmed deployments Kandahar, Al-Hasaka, Mosul. Sniper designation Advanced Tier. Certified. Kill record 42. Confirmed. 17 under joint tasking. Weapons proficiencies M24, M110, MK13, M17. Commendations: Bronze Star with V device, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Navy, Marine Corps Achievement Medal, no court-martials, no disciplinary flags, psychological evals all cleared. Final recommendation marked mission fatigue, voluntary transfer authorized. The profile was locked above Tier 2, redacted in parts, but not fully sealed. Someone from avionics pulled the old footage from Syria. Frame-locked thermal recon, rooftop silhouette, same stance, same build, short recoil movement, same firing rhythm. Rachel Wynn had been the final clearance asset in 3 direct action raids. Precision shots, close support. She had left without ceremony, declined a retirement package, no exit interview filed, requested logistics duty by handwritten memo. The request had been approved within 72 hours. No flag raised, no review board. Her record moved down the chain, sanitized. Until now, by 15, 10, the whispers weren't rumor. They were confirmed. Ghost 5 didn't train logistics personnel. They didn't fly cargo. They cleared targets. She had been one of theirs, and she had asked to leave it behind. Not because of failure, because she'd finished the job and chosen something else. The room was small, no windows, a desk, a chair, one overhead light, 1508 hours. She sat with the form in front of her. DA 4187, personnel action request, transfer, voluntary. Her name was already typed. Last 4 of her SSN at the top. Unit code, current billet, Master Sergeant, Special Operations Command, sniper designation listed in Block 5. Her right hand hovered over the signature line. She had read the form 3 times, noted the routing channel, knew who would see it first. Her CO, then division, then personnel branch. She didn't care. 1 checkbox at the bottom, justification for request, typed in all caps. Self-initiated reassignment. Transition from direct combat role to support operations. No supplemental memo attached. The pen touched paper. She signed R. Wynn, Eleanor, MSGT, 7STG. 1 stroke, 1 decision. The room stayed quiet. A file folder sat beside the form. Closed. No label. She slid the form inside, snapped the clasp shut, stood. She left the chair pushed back exactly 3 inches from the table, picked up the folder, walked out. Down the hall. A sergeant from admin sat behind a glass window. She passed the file through the slot. The sergeant checked the cover, didn't look up, just said, "You sure?" Rachel nodded once. That was it. No ceremony, no briefing, no exit review. Her rifle had already been turned in, locker cleared, call sign removed from the board. By 16:00, she was no longer part of Ghost 5. She didn't talk about why. No speeches, no statements. She packed her own gear, boarded a personnel flight out of Fort Bragg. When she arrived at her next unit, she didn't mention sniper quals. She didn't bring medals. She didn't wear the patch. Her new ID read, Technical Sergeant, Logistics. She checked tie-down straps and never missed. By 1812, the C-130 was back on the ramp. Maintenance crews moved in. Fuel lines hissed. Pallets offloaded. Crates logged. Rachel Wynn didn't file a special report. She didn't speak to command. No debrief was requested. The UAV contact never made it into the official mission log. But it started anyway. Not loudly. First, a photo. Someone had caught at her tightening a strap with her left hand, a rag around the right, blood on the sleeve, dust on her collar. The wind had pressed her hair tight against her neck, eyes narrowed just past the camera. It passed from squadron to squadron. No caption. Then, a question. Who shot the drone? Nobody had the answer. But everyone knew. 2 days later, a senior master sergeant from Armory confirmed it. The M17 recovered from her pouch wasn't standard issue. The trigger was short pull. Slide milled for optic. Grip stippled by hand. Serial number linked to a weapons cache used by Ghost 5. 1 week later, the aircraft's crew chief made a request. Unofficial. Mount the weapon. Not in a museum. Not in a glass case at base HQ. In the cargo hold. The place it was fired. A display was built. Simple frame. Plexiglass. No lights. Mounted inside. The M17. Still worn. Still ready. Below it, a brass plate. No names. Just a line. One shot. One person. When it mattered most, the crew stopped using her nickname. She was just Sergeant Wynn now. Sometimes, just Wynn. New airmen joined the rotation. Asked about the weapon. The veterans told it straight. She saved the plane. With a sidearm. From the cargo bay. Some asked if it was true. The answer didn't change. She still flew missions. Still showed up early. Still walked the tie-downs alone. The notebook stayed the same. Leather edges, soft with time. She still wrote everything by hand. Still used the same pen. Never borrowed one. At 05:42 before one flight, a young officer offered to help with weight distribution. She nodded. Let him. Then rechecked everything quietly when he left. No pride. Just habit. A few wanted to know more. She didn't tell them. She never talked about Ghost 5. Never mentioned Syria. She didn't tell them why she'd come back to cargo. But they watched her work. Saw how her fingers moved along straps. How she spotted stress points others missed. How she could find imbalance by sound. And slowly, the jokes stopped. No one questioned her methods, and command heard the rumors. They didn't confirm or deny. No write-up was published, no award submitted. The mission remained classified. But everyone on that plane knew the truth. And every new crew member learned it. Because the gun was still there. Mounted at shoulder height. Halfway down the bay wall. Quiet. Unmarked. But impossible to miss. It didn't shine. It didn't need to. Neither did she. She was already back at work. Same checklist. Same steps. Same silence. Because for Rachel Wynn, nothing had changed. Except everything. The sun hadn't risen yet. The ramp lights cast long, pale shadows across the tarmac. A low hum buzzed from the flight line generators. Somewhere downrange, a forklift, reversed, beeping slow, steady. Rachel Wynn stood near the rear loading bay of the C-130J, clipboard in hand. Same canvas pouch on her hip, same boots, same pen. It was 04:57. She was walking crate to crate, checking tags, reading weights, tugging on straps. No rush. Same order. Same sequence. Inside, 2 crewmen ran through flight setup. Radios crackled. Equipment checks. Routine. The mission was short. Standard hop to Echo Base. 6 pallets. 1 portable generator. 5 personnel on transfer. No escort. Rachel made her way to the side hatch. Logged the tie-down list. Adjusted the netting over pallet 4. Noticed a small fray in the anchor strap. Replaced it without pause. At 05:03, a young airman stepped up onto the ramp. He was tall. Still had the weight of training on him. Fresh insignia on his chest. Skin tight across the collar. He stopped 6 feet away. She didn't look at him at first. Finished what she was doing. Noted something on the log sheet. Then turned. He hesitated. Sergeant Wynn. She nodded once. He didn't speak right away. Then finally, My sister was on that flight. The one with the drone. The one you... He trailed off. She didn't react. No shift in her face. No change in posture. He fumbled his next words. She told me afterward. Said she didn't even know what happened until they landed. Just said someone in the cargo saved them. He looked down, pulled something from his pocket. A small folded photo. His sister, uniformed, standing beside a medical pallet, smiling. She made me promise to say thank you if I ever saw you. Rachel looked at the photo, then at him. Her voice was quiet. Just doing my job. Airman. He didn't know what to say next. Just nodded, held the photo tighter, then stepped back down the ramp. Rachel turned, walked the last length of the bay. Final check, floor locks all tight, strap tension uniform, corner seals aligned. She paused by the mounted weapon. The M17 sat behind its casing. Same angle, same plate, unmarked but unmistakable. She reached out, touched the glass once, then turned back to her clipboard. The intercom buzzed. Load ready. She keyed her headset. Affirmative. Then resumed her position by the hatch. Another flight, another checklist. No fanfare, no interviews. Just cargo. Secured and quiet. Like always.